Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching the world. My name is Sean Driver. This is the Red Horde, and a quick little video put together at the request of someone, I won't call them out, on Twitter, who sent me a direct message that said, how did Wrexham make 7 substitutes in 4 windows? Not sure how the rules applied. I sure as heck didn't know, so I said I'd dive into the rules, see if I could come up with an answer, and I found one. So stick with me. This is the Red Horde, and we're going to do a deep dive into the rules regarding substitutions. Let's get into it. So, as to the background, in the game that happened just yesterday, January 1st, 2014, against Barrow, Wrexham AFC brought in 7 substitutions during 4 substitution windows. Those substitution windows did not occur during the half. They all happened during the match. And during the game, the commentators during the game, Mark Griffiths and others, made a query as to the legality of it. There were some tweets about it following, and I got the direct message from a fan who I really respect, who said, "What happened?" And I said, "You know what? I'll have a deep dive. I'll do a dig through the regulations and see what I can find out." So, putting them up over here to cover everything up. These are the substitutes that came in courtesy of FOTMob. Took a screenshot, so thank you to FOTMob for making it easy for me. In sum, when you go through there, what do we have? We have 6 players coming in. Dalby and Mendy came in at the 70th minute. That was window number 1. James Jones came in at the second window to replace Andy Cannon. That's window number 2. Jordan Davies came in the 87th minute to replace Elliot Lee. That was window number 3. And then we have this 4th window, which we'll get into why the irregularities of it, when Barnett and Boyle came into the 90th minute. So I'm going to Quentin Tarantino this thing, and I'm going to go with the conclusion first, and you can get the answer. And if you want to end the video, then go ahead and do it. Hit the subscribe button before you go and the like button before you go. But I'll give you the answer so that you have it, and then if you want to stay with me to go through the regulations and the deep dive, you can choose to do it. But here's the answer. The IFAB, which stands for the International Football Association Board, has a Protocol B. And in that Protocol B, they say if one team has a concussion, 2 concussions, they're up to a maximum of 2, they are allowed to substitute players in. For the other team, when a concussion substitution is used, they are given an additional substitution. So I'm assuming that's to keep the competitive balance fair. If somebody's coming in as a fresh player off the bench, you're allowed to answer with a fresh player off of the bench. So what does it do? It gives you a new window, and it gives you new substitutions. There's some rules and regulations regarding how they're used, but that's the answer. As you're aware, 2 players went down. We'll go through the details for Barrow as a result of concussion protocol, and we were advised during the game by the 4th official, or would have been according to the procedure, and we were given 2 substitutes. And so no hijinks in place. That was the nature of the rule. Nothing really too fancy about it, but I thought, you know what, while I'm here and go through the deep dive, let's get into it. So let's just take a step then, look at the rules. Section 34.4.1, which is contained in Section 5 of the EFL handbook. Like I've said, the handbook, I'll put the PDF link down below. So here it is, popped up on the screen, and let's just go through the nuts and bolts of what this says. Is that you're allowed to list 7 substitutes on your team sheet. Everybody knows that. We used all 7. Barrow used 6, and I'm not sure why they did that, but I guess it doesn't matter. Each club's only allowed to use a maximum of 3 opportunities during the match, or windows, to make their substitutions. And during those windows, you can do as many or as little as you want, but you're only allowed to substitute a maximum of 5 during a maximum of 3 windows, subject to those exceptions. Also, there is an extra period that's allowed during the halftime. Those substitutions will not count as a window, so it's really 3 during the game, plus you get the half, but you still have to stay within that maximum of 5, subject to the exceptions. So what are those exceptions? Well, just to get one out of the way, the championship recently changed their rules this year to allow for 9 substitutions, up from 5. Don't know if that's going to end up happening to League 1 or League 2, but that's contained in the guidance, not within the actual rules, obviously, for League 2. So we're yet to see. We're yet to see exactly what happens there. Let's get into the exceptions, and they don't give the full wording, and I'm going to be honest with you, as far as regulations go, this thing's not worded very well. My pedantic overviewing anyways. So in addition to the 5 substitutions from the general rule that we went over, 3 substitution windows plus the half and the 5 subs, there are 2 additional substitutes that will be permitted to utilize up to concussion substitutes and or additional substitutes as appropriate from the team sheet. Now, I'm just going to stop there and say I hate the use of and or. It's a pet peeve if you're North American of mine in the regulations, the use of the disjunctive or, and then you've got the conjunctive and put together. The interpretation means it has to be an and by default. So stop using and or. It's and it's permissible. So it's the permissibility of it doesn't make it an obligation. So just cut out the excess. But anyway, nobody needs to hear that rant, and I guess I probably made it just to make myself happy. Yay me. I sound like such a jerk right now. Anyway, the regulation gets a little bit poorly written, where it also states from the team sheet, and it says, strictly in accordance with the provisions of the IFAB Concussion Protocol, International Football Association Board, and any associated guidance issued by the league. But it doesn't provide any definitional terms in the regulations as to concussion substitute or additional substitute. It requires jumping into another document. It'd be advantageous. Take that additional substitute rules and at least give some guidance in the regulations as to what there are. But fortunately, the concussion protocol perfectly explains where those subs come from, and I've taken the link to that protocol and I've put it down below. But I'll bring up what's contained in that document, almost in its entirety, in 3 different sections. So here's the principles. Each team's permitted to use a maximum of 2 concussion substitutes in any match. Those concussion substitutes may be used regardless of the number of substitutes already used. So if you've blasted through them and the concussions happen late in the game, you don't have to have some punch-eyed football player running around in pain and suffering. I shouldn't laugh. It's not a joking matter. It's prudent to end up removing players that need to be removed for health reasons in any event. In competitions where the number of named substitutes is the same as the maximum number of normal substitutes, the concussion substitute, basically what that means is you can go and grab another player. If you've used all of your subs up and you've put somebody on the bench and somebody gets a concussion, you can go and you can dig that player back off the bench and put them out there. That makes sense. And when a concussion substitute is used, the opposing team has the option to use an additional substitute for any reason. It doesn't say why, but it makes sense to me. Competitive balance. If you're especially you're into the 80th minute, somebody goes down with a concussion substitute and they've used up all of their previous stuff, they get a fresh body that comes in. They can bring in a defender to shore up, an attacker, use it strategically, however they want to kind of do it, and you get an answer to that by bringing in somebody to make things leveled up. So just going through what happened with Barrow. They ended up in the 21st minute. Lucas Stevenson came in for David Worrell, who unfortunately went down with an expected concussion, and there was an extended time. And fortunately, the good news is from Barrow, who has posted, is David Worrell went to hospital, but he was released and is reportedly doing well. And Lucas Stevenson was assessed at the race course and was up talking and doing well, so he didn't have to go to hospital. And so both players doing well. That's good news. Nobody, doesn't matter what team you're cheering for, don't like injuries to anybody at any point in time. Would rather have best team out on any given day, and so I hope them a speedy recovery if they haven't recovered already. But in any event, you've got 2 concussion substitutes then at the 21st and the 57th minute, and then going back to the protocol at the bottom, it says when a concussion substitute is used, we get our additional substitute, and that would have been relayed over to Wrexham. So there it is. We've got 2 more substitutes. And then interestingly, it doesn't mention the windows within the regulations at all. And fortunately, it's in the IFAB Protocol B. I would have liked to have some sort of reference within the EFL regulations just to make it make sense. I noted during my notes that logic and deductive reasons justify a conclusion that the exception has to apply to increase the windows, because if you can just imagine if you've used up all of your windows and you go to try to make a sub, to end up having some player having to suffer or a team end up being shorthanded solely because a player got concussed, that takes away the competitive balance, and that's not what the league wants to do. So IFAB goes on further to talk about the substitution opportunities. I'll put those up on the screen here. Making a concussion substitution is separate from any limit on the number of normal substitution opportunities. Great. For all the reasons that we just went over. If a team makes a normal substitution at the same time as a concussion substitution, however, this will count as one of its normal substitution opportunities. So there's a message to the staff. If you're going to run out an extra person, you've used up a window. So don't just use your concussion substitute, put one person out there unless you're ready to deal with the consequence of taking up a window at that point in time. once a team has used its normal substitution opportunities, it cannot use a concussion substitution opportunity to make a normal substitution, which makes sense. If you're going to have somebody come in to replace someone during a concussion substitute or an additional substitute, you can't just use that extra window to put somebody in to say, oh, well, we'll call an extra player off the bench and have them run out too. If you've used your windows and you haven't used all of your subs, you can't dig off the bench. We're just looking to replace the injured player, or for the additional substitutes, and this is the last item on the substitution opportunities. For additional substitutions, you can only be used for an additional substitute and not a normal substitute. And it makes the perfect sense to me. You get one, we get one, and we can't use it to dig somebody else off the bench for any other reason. So normal circumstance, 4 windows. The rule goes on to state that you can't use a normal substitute at the same. I think that makes sense. Anyways, the rules clarify that just because you get an extra window, it doesn't give you another one. That's fine. And the only other thing that may be interesting, I'm trying to find a way of what would happen if the team didn't sufficiently answer the question, or what the consequence is. But they do state that within 10 days of receiving the request from the league, the team that used a concussion substitute has to answer with information as to why they sufficiently used that concussion substitute. I don't know what the consequence of that would be if somebody fudged a concussion substitute. You're relying on your medical staff. Your medical staff tells you that you need to do it, and so you used one. Certainly couldn't punish the additional substitute because they got slid in on reliance of the other team being truthful. I'll put the information up for the procedure here. There's not much with the procedure that I think is necessarily important or interesting, except that the injured player is not allowed to take part, and maybe most importantly, the concussion substitute could be made at any point. It can be immediately after the concussion occurs or is suspected. It can be done after an assessment, or it can be at any other time when a concussion occurs or is suspected. You can have people who end up getting a knock, they don't show any symptoms, and a little bit later they do something funny and they end up getting concussion systems, and it makes perfect sense to allow a team to substitute at that point in time when symptoms are become known or advised by the medical staff. So pleased to see that the concussion substitution doesn't have to be immediate, and there you go. We used all 6 subs. Boyle, Mendy, Barnett, Jones, Davis, and Dalby all squeaked in. They squeaked in with an extra window, and the reason being is competitive balance says if somebody gets a concussion protocol, the other team gets an additional window and an additional sub, and so it all came together. That's the answer. Rush that one together because I'm off to work and got stuff to do. So if you like this and you stuck through the end, then good for you. Watch party coming up for Sunday. We're going to find when the EFL draw is going to come on. We'll be following along for that. Hopefully in Canada we're able to get it. Part of the frustration being Sportsnet not picking up the stuff off the Welsh channels, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to watch it, mind meld or otherwise. So we'll be there for the match party even if Brendan's filling in. Like, comment, subscribe, ask questions. If you like this sort of content rather than me just doing the match reviews, I'll stick with it. And yes, I am working on the Academy video, but that thing is an absolute beast, and I hope it lives up to expectations because I've been talking about it for like 2-3 months now. Anyway, Sean Driver, the Red Horde, thanks for listening. I'm out.